And I think too, I think another thing that can really be, you talk about perspective, I think another thing that can be an enemy of really understanding is simplistic solutions.
Ooh.
Like I've even seen services where churches have like.
I just want to say this again. Talk that talk. I just want to say it one more time about that. It was good. It was right there.
Where I've seen church services where people have like prayed that like this prayer is going to end racism. Like they have actually prayed that prayer in a gathering, like that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that's going to do away with what has transpired over hundreds of years, hundreds of actions. I mean, just all that's going to go away and it's going to cease to exist because this thing happened in this moment.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Multi-Ethnic Gospel Approach Podcast, where we cover all things multi-ethnic.
It's the M-E-G-A-B-O-B-C-A-S-T, the Mega Podcast. It's the M-E-G-A-B-O-B-C-A-S-T, Mega Podcast.
What's up, good people? This your boy Marcel, and I am so glad to be back with you for another episode of Mega Podcast, where we cover all things mega and we discuss and discover gospel-centered diversity. So I'm here with my guy, Pastor Micah Gaston, in the building. Hey, you know what I'm saying? So listen, last time we got a chance to talk about connecting relationally with people who don't look like us, with other cultures, other ethnicities, people from different backgrounds, and understanding how to connect and the difference between this false sense of connection that we get through the internet,
Sure.
you know, and social media platforms versus actual real life conversations and connections. And so as we kind of explore those keys of relationship building, we got some more stuff we want to kind of throw out there, man. And I'm gonna give the driving wheel over to Sir Micah Gaston, and he's gonna drive us. You know what I'm saying? No swerving. You know what I'm saying? You gotta drive straight. You know what I'm saying? Hey, but good news is that it's an open road.
Sweet.
You know what I'm saying? So
Sweet.
we can turn the engine up. You know what I'm saying? We can
Turn the radio up.
all of it, man. Just dang, we can go.
That's right.
Let's go.
You can do, like those road trips like you used to do in college, going to see my folks, where you could get away with doing like Mountain Dew and Little Debbie's,
Right.
Like the whole ride.
The whole ride,
Yeah, just straight
you pay
up.
for it later.
That's right. Roll the window down, that cold air coming in. You know, back then I had the metabolism, I'd get away with it. You
Right.
know, Little
Oh,
Debbie
no.
was my friend. Now Little Debbie's
Not
my
today.
enemy.
I'm about to cover up a little bit now. You
Now
know
Little
what I'm
Debbie's my enemy. You know, back then she was my
Right.
friend.
Right.
She, 25 cents and you can go a long way with Little Debbie's. You know what I mean? Like, okay. So we're gonna have that kind of trip.
She a witch. Little Debbie will get you, boy. She tastes good. Tastes good right now, but she gonna get you a
Deceptive.
witch.
She's deceptive.
She ain't loyal. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Hey, subscribe to the channel.
There you go.
Subscribe, hit the notification bell. Make sure you are following the content that we are releasing. All right, let's jump into the conversation. I'm sorry, I forgot that very important piece. Important piece.
Right.
Of
Say that 3 times fast.
Situation.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So we like to really dive in today and talk about what does understanding look like.
Yeah.
What does understanding look like? Because I think we assume sometimes we know more than we know. There's a lot of research out there that talks about how many judgments we make in the first minute's time we meet someone, or even the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So some research says that we make as many as judgment per second in the first 30 seconds. Some have a little bit less than that. But the point is, we paint a picture in our head almost immediately when we meet someone about who they are, what they've done, what they like, what they dislike, what their strengths, what are their weaknesses. Yeah. We kind of build people out based upon those observations we make, wrong or right. And so I think that we need to be able to seek real understanding and not just our perception, because there's a great distance between those often, right?
Yeah.
And so I think an illustration has always been helpful to me. We've talked about this even as we've taught our people, right? Talking about how do we engage in multicultural relationships, and that is the iceberg. And so scientists say that on average, what you see above the water is only about 13% of the total mass of that iceberg is. So that says, about 90-ish%, of what is there is actually below the surface.
Yeah.
And I think that is very true cross-culturally.
Right.
Like we see things on the surface.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more. So we see the what, in other words, right?
Right.
We very rarely dig in multicultural relationships to the level of understanding where we ask the why.
Yeah.
Here's what I see. Now, why is that there? Uh-oh. You all right?
Yep. I'm good. Had something in my eye.
Okay. When a log in your eye or anything had to get out, right?
I hope not. I hope not. It felt like an eye book or something. You know?
Well, you gotta get those out. Those things are dangerous. Things are dangerous.
It's random, man. Random.
So I love us to dig into a little bit and talk about a few of these things that can be some things that we just need to understand that are true. Because I think you could say, this crosses all cultural lines, that no one likes to be the object of a stereotype.
Correct.
Right? No one likes to be cast in the certain frame of reference that is inaccurate, that people have just assumed all this is true, when in reality, very little of it could be true.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to avoid that and reach real understanding, get past the naivety or naivete, however you say that, being naive.
Yes,
being naive and thinking that our perception is reality, right?
Right.
And so here's a few things I think we need to kind of talk through. So I think the first thing that we need to understand is that there are differences in perception. There are differences in perspectives.
Perspectives, okay.
And so, for instance, how one event can happen, and how if I'm seeing that through a lens of an Asian perception, a black perception, a Latino perception, a white perception, a perspective, culturally, how we could see some of those things very differently, even though we're looking at the same event.
Yeah.
And so, how have you seen how even people that come from different backgrounds experience the same thing and yet have a totally opposite response to that same stimulus, right? Same event, very different reaction.
Absolutely. Well, man, I don't have to go very far for that.
Sure.
Like if you don't mind, I would love to just stay within my house.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Sounds good.
And so in a marriage, there's a man and a woman. You know what I'm saying? And those two people, they come from two different worlds. And sometimes, one event will happen, and both people in the same house, in a holy matrimony, in a loving relationship, will see the same thing two very different ways.
Yeah.
And so if we take that and we multiply that by all the people in the earth, like that's how many different perceptions that we have. So not just cross-culturally, but just like literally like from person to person.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And so because it's happened for me just in my home on different things, not that we're like divided or anything, it's just like we just see stuff different.
Sure.
And I think that's a kind of good place maybe to just kind of take a pit stop.
Yeah.
Just because you see stuff different doesn't necessarily mean you have to be divided.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because you see another side of this situation doesn't necessarily mean that's grounds for separation or that's grounds for,
Sure.
or that makes it irreconcilable differences.
That's right.
Like we can't continue to disconnect from people just because we don't see things the same. You aren't meant to see things the same. You are created differently. You are created to see stuff the way that God has created you to see it. So you have a type of vision that nobody else in the world has. That's the beautiful thing about you being the creation of God. And so we have to understand that. And so as we understand that, then we can start to embrace other people's perceptions and understand that, man, just because you see something differently than I see it doesn't make that grounds for separation or grounds for divorce or grounds for whatever.
Yeah.
Like this is an opportunity to understand. The Bible says in all thy getting, get understanding.
He just brought the King James on us.
You know what I'm saying?
All thy getting.
All thy getting. That took me back a little bit to my to my church roots a little bit. When I say church roots, that's like 15 years ago. Wasn't that long ago, people. But God has done some great things. Anywho, like in all thy getting, get understanding.
Yeah.
And so as we are seeing things differently as people, because we will, God's created us too, which is the one beautiful thing about community, so that we can begin to see stuff, from different ways based on but the report is from others. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And so we do recon as we build community. We do
That's
recon
right.
and figure out, man, like, okay, what's the other side? What's the other side of this? And then we begin to get a bigger picture, put the puzzle pieces together so that we can really understand what's going on.
Sure. And I think being able to say that it is not a few of these things that are not Christian character qualities, like ghosting people, canceling people, or having an approach to people
Yeah.
to where you can't agree to disagree about non-gospel issues is not godly.
Not at all.
Like, I think that with things like social media is not evil, it's a tool. Like C.S. Lewis said, right? You can have a plank of wood in your hand. You can use it to build a house or whack somebody over the head with it. It's not evil, right?
Right.
It's a tool. You can use it for good. You can use it for
real
bad,
good.
right? But I think one of the things that it has done is like Twitter or some of these platforms have really just become a sparring ring for people
Right.
to disagree.
Yeah.
Where it's no longer about understanding anymore. It's about, if you don't agree with me, you're an idiot.
Right.
If you don't agree with me, you're just misinformed.
Which gets on my nerves. I'm gonna say this. Gets
Yeah.
on my nerves because it's like throwing stones and hiding
Yeah.
on the internet. Like you can
Gotcha.
You know what
I'm
I'm
outta
saying?
here. Yeah.
Boom. And then now you don't gotta log on to your social
That's
media
right.
for days.
Right.
You know, or you can block them after you say what you want to say.
Right.
It's throwing stones and hiding. It's not real, people.
Yeah.
It's not real. And so yeah, I think you just in general you have to be able to, like in real life, be able to hear with a heart of understanding and the aim to understand. And not just trying to persuade and, get people on your side, but
Yeah.
be able to see theirs and
Sure.
where they're coming from. And understand that it's okay that we're different. God did not create us the same.
That's right.
If he would have created us the same, we wouldn't be humans. We'd be robots.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So like we're unique in every way. Like we're different. God has built us that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that when it comes to perspectives, that like truly there is no, I mean, people talk about, different media networks, whatever, the no spin zone or some of these different things. There's no such thing. Like we all have
that.
our biases and perspectives.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
philosophically people say, the whole argument of blank slate doesn't exist. Nobody's a blank slate.
Yeah.
We've all been written on prior to the conversation.
Come on,
right?
man. Yeah.
Through life experiences,
Yeah.
good or bad,
that's good.
through what we've read, through what we've watched,
Yeah.
through what people have told us.
Yeah.
And so we all bring.
Because we've been impressed upon.
There you go.
Hey.
And so when we come to conversation, we bring all those things. We don't leave those things behind. That's part of who we are.
Yeah. That's good.
And so I think being able to say, and whenever we come to the conversation seeking understanding as Christians, the goal should not be alignment. That at the end of the conversation, you're gonna agree with me 100% and be in
Right.
lockstep.
Yeah.
The goal is not alignment.
Yeah.
The goal is understanding.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if that's the goal in mind, I don't have to try to persuade you over to my side of the conversation, because here's what happens when it comes to understanding and how we miss it. All of us as human beings,
Yeah.
if we simply come to the table when we're encountering people that are different than us, and the goal is for them to be more like us, we'll spend the conversation thinking and rehearsing what we're going to say back rather than pumping the brakes
That's good, man.
and hearing what the other person is saying
Yeah.
and understanding their perspective.
Yeah.
Because if the goal really is to understand and not for them to agree with me, then it's not an argument. It actually is a conversation,
Yeah. Yeah. That's real good.
And I think that social media has made us where we are so, it is, and made it more, it's heightened it. I don't think it's
Right.
always been there. It's heightened that sense of us being debaters,
Yeah.
where we want to make our case and get people to agree with us rather than the point of the conversation being understanding. I love what Francis Schaeffer said. He was a theologian, philosopher, past generation, lectured all over the world, wrote a lot of great stuff. And he said this. He said, the goal of every conversation for me is to always give someone the grace of having a corner to retire to, even if somebody I disagree with.
Ooh.
He said, I always want them to feel like what took preeminence, right, or what took the central point of our conversation
Yeah.
was not the point, but the person.
Yeah.
Like they felt honored, they felt loved, they felt respected, even if we didn't agree
Yeah.
about the majority of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The goal was for that person to feel,
Yeah.
hey, he cares for me.
Come on,
Like
man.
he really wants to know who I am, like
Yeah.
what makes me tick, like what's true about me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lost art for so many Christians.
Yeah. Because like my question would be like, what's the aim? Is it condemnation or is it compassion?
Oh, that's good, man.
Like, are you trying to
You
condemn
better say
them?
that again.
You know what I'm saying? Like what's the aim?
That's
is
good,
it
man.
condemnation or is it compassion?
Sure.
Is your aim to condemn them for what they believe or how
Yeah.
they see?
Yeah.
Or is your aim to show them compassion? Say, man, I want to understand you. I want to learn to do life with you well. I want to
Yeah.
learn to be a good friend to you, to
That's
be a good
good, man.
neighbor to you. Like, if that's not the aim of of any conversation that you have with somebody that has the potential to be divisive, just
Sure.
based on where y'all may stand or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if the aim isn't compassion, then man, you're not walking in the love of Jesus. Period.
That's good, man.
And so we have to start to question, like, what is the purpose for this conversation? What is the purpose for this interaction? And is this spewing out of love, or is just spewing out of contempt, or whatever? Like, like, where is this coming from?
That's good, man.
You know what I'm saying? And so, as you're understanding people, we should be understanding with a heart of compassion and not with a motive to condemn people.
Man, that's so good.
Amen.
For sure. And I think if we're honest, we can all see that sometimes in our heart.
Yeah.
Because like we see or read something or experience
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and our first response is, well, they're wrong, and I just need to show them.
Come on, man. Especially like it's like people who, because I don't know about you. Well, I'd imagine you're a little bit like me in this facet. Like, I tend to lean into conversation a little bit. Like,
Sure.
I almost like it. Like, just because it I don't know. It's something about being able to prove your case.
Sure.
That's just kind of it's like a high that you get from it almost.
Yeah,
You know what
sure.
I'm saying? But at the same time, if we are just trying to prove our case and we're not trying to prove our love for one another,
Yeah.
then it's errant from the get go. You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying? It's lost already.
Yeah.
And so we have to be at a place where, man, we can put our motive or our desire for confrontation or our desire to be right.
Yeah.
We can put that aside. A good friend of me said a while back, and he was he said it jokingly, but
Yeah.
like the sentiment of it is really real.
Yeah.
We were talking about marriage, specifically. He said, "You want to be married or you want to be right?"
That's good, man.
So
Right.
I ask you, you want to be in good relationship or you want to be right?
Yeah.
Not that you condone wrong,
Sure.
but we seek to understand and not to condemn,
Sure.
and not to just make you feel bad because we're able to do that with our words.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, just you got to ask yourself these questions, man.
And I think that's an important part when we talk about perspectives too, is that we're not saying here that you don't fact check, like that you
Yeah.
don't say, hey, well, this is, here's some things to consider. We're not saying that you just put that aside.
Right.
We're just saying that what needs to be central is understanding.
Yes.
And not just trying to make your case for being right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I think that can be the main thing often. And it's the enemy of understanding. Right?
Yeah.
If we just want to be right, then it becomes a debate, not a conversation.
That's good, man. Because we'll never get to see the other 87%.
Yeah, if we do that. That's right.
If we're so busy condemning the 13.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
We'll never get to dig. We'll never get to see below the surface. We'll never get to understand who someone is at their core.
Yeah.
If we're just, if our aim is just to condemn what we see and we don't get to the root of it, because it could be something that happened that was very traumatic for them.
Yeah.
That is causing this thing to rear its head. But there's a whole nother level of this issue that could be attacked, can be executed, and can be eradicated with just love.
Yeah.
If you love and you seek understanding.
That's right.
So
Sure.
yeah, we have to seek understanding.
That's right. And I think another thing that can really be, you talk about perspective, I think another thing that can be an enemy of really understanding is simplistic solutions.
Ooh.
Like I've even seen services where churches have like,
I just want to say this again. Talk that talk. I just want to say it one more time with that. It was good. It was right there.
where I've seen church services where people have like prayed that like this prayer is going to end racism. Like they have actually prayed that prayer in a gathering, like that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that's going to do away with what has transpired over hundreds of years, hundreds of actions. I mean, just all that's going to go away and it's going to cease to exist because this thing happened in this moment.
Yeah.
And so I think particularly when we're sitting down to have a diverse conversation, we need to understand that these issues, these diverse conversations, and the issues we're unearthing.
Yeah.
They're deep down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of like growing up, we used to play G.I. Joe a lot. You know, and we were little, so digging a little foxhole for us back then was like a couple of shovelfuls, and we could hide in there.
Right.
But now we're a little bit bigger. We gotta. As we got older, I'm going to reveal my country roots for a second. Is that right? So the pastoral we stayed in had all this a knee-high grass, and we had this guy that come in a tractor and he bush hog all of it. So my mom's like, you got to be careful when you go out there and cut, because we were all teenagers by then.
Oh, wow.
We were still playing, G.I. Joe. That was like our deal. She's like, now be careful. They've dug some foxholes out there. Well, the guy's like, nah, it's no big deal. So he goes out there and start cutting, and he got one of those big tractor wheels stuck in the big ditch we had dug for a foxhole. So, because they got a little bigger over time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that has nothing to do with anything other than these conversations. These things are dug down deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if we think we're going to unearth and solve some of these problems that have deep historical hurts and issues, in a couple conversations, then I think that we're going to miss true understanding.
Man, so here's the man. I love this conversation because we oftentimes the tall wall that's up is so visible.
Yeah.
And it's always like in your face. It's always in the way, right?
Sure.
But we don't think about the deep root because we can't see it.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So we don't attack it, or we don't go after it because it's like, well, it's not in our way. And actually, it is, because it's sprouting up. What we see is just a very small percentage of how deep the root actually goes.
Sure.
And so I think it's just important, man, to just be mindful of like how deep down we need to dig in some cases. And sometimes it's not about you digging to like dig at people, but it's like, man, just being there and letting them unearth, those things of what happened, the trauma, the disrespect, the disregard, the disappointments, all those things that may have transpired through their experience, to help us understand why they are or why they act the way they do now. Because just because somebody is acting, quote unquote, acting out, doesn't mean that's who God created them to be.
Yeah.
And so, again, we have to see people through the lens of the Father. We have to see people. We have to see people with compassion. And if we're not handling them well, man, we will. There's so many people who have been mishandled.
Sure.
Just because they've been trying to. There have been people in their life who have solely sought out to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And to prove to them that they're no good. And this is why we see a callous of a heart, like, or a very hard heart, or a very, a heart that's like just very hard on the outside, right?
Sure.
And
protection not to get hurt.
Yeah, we see all these defense mechanisms popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
So just because if you dig at somebody and they laugh it off, that's not funny.
Yeah.
It's a defense mechanism.
Sure.
Because they don't want to deal with you right now.
Yeah.
Because if they really dealt with you the way they wanted to, they'd have some nice choice words for you.
Yeah, sure.
Or some hands for you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that just because somebody acts a certain way, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's you, that you're the problem. It's just that they have some things, some triggers that we have to become aware of, and we have to understand that some of this stuff is just, they have in place as a defense mechanism, so that they don't really, unearth their pain on you,
That's right.
and project it on you. And so, yeah, we just got to be careful, as we're understanding people, as we're understanding people's perspective, and as we're digging more into the why. Like, it's really not us digging, but it's allowing them to dig and unearth and show us, those parts of them. Because if we just start digging, again, we talked about this last episode, we start invading their personal space.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to let them do that.
Yeah. And I think we don't want it to become something where we begin digging in areas where it becomes like a treasure hunt for us, rather than allowing them to say, for them to dictate. Here's where we can uncover, and here's where, and that way it's healthy, right? They have charge of that.
Yeah.
That way we're not trespassing. You know what I mean? And where we go to dig up an area that's, you're not welcome here. You know what I mean? Like, so I know as we kind of wrap up today, I like to dive into one more area of understanding that I think is really important. And I think that often there can be some suspicion, particularly for friends I've talked with that are coming from a background of being a minority in situations, of when they come to conversations where a new person beginning to know, particularly maybe a white person coming to know them, where they would have some red flags that would be in their mind. Can you help us understand that a little bit? I know in conversations we've had that we've walked through this. Could you share some of that with us just a little bit?
Red flags. So just in my culture, like we're taught, from a young age, hey, when you go into certain areas, there's going to be, white people or whomever, like, hey, be careful.
Sure.
Watch out for this, watch out for that, because their experiences have been very just horrible. They've had situations happen where, people have slighted them, for certain promotions, or they have taken credit for ideas that weren't theirs, and that got them recognition that should have been, another person. And so, hey, protect yourself, work hard. It's been stated, and it's been stated and it's been proven, in certain spheres where as a minority, you have to work 10 times as hard to be considered just as good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
So
tough.
it's stuff like that we have to be super aware about, overly aware about as we're going into certain spaces, just to be able to feel good about ourselves, feel confident, but also to get and earn respect from others. And so that has been something that we have been, that's been like ingrained in us from, from since we could, communicate and all that. So just understanding like that. So for instance, like for black people, we our kids, you don't see our kids acting up a whole bunch in public, not a whole ton, or like not tantrums. You don't see that a whole bunch.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they get whoopings as soon as they start crying. They get slapped in the mouth, which isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing, people. It's not a good thing. Not condoning it at all. But we have noticed, like, amongst, like, white culture, and you can even speak into this more, but, like, we noticed, like, in white culture, there tends to be a lot more tolerance for tantrums than in black culture or minority cultures, just because, from our perspective, you're not going to act a fool in public. Yeah. They already think we don't got no sense. This is the actual, like, understanding that you gotta, and it's sad, but like there's just like underlined like caution there, right? Yeah. We don't want to look like we don't have sense, and so we discipline our kids harder. We're way more firmer when you have solid parenting in the house. Hold, it's just very much, hey, we don't do that, and it doesn't matter how you feel in that moment. This is not what we do. Yeah, we have to be above reproach in order to be received. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just a way harsher disciplinary process, but it's also like one of those things where we just it just is what it is. They had bad experiences, and so they've projected that onto the upcoming generation, and assuming that this is going to always be the case. And a lot of times it isn't. Sure. I found out with having white brothers and sisters that I have great relationship with, I found out that they don't even look at it like that, but it's just what it's been for so long. It's like, hey, this is what it's been, and it doesn't seem like it's changed. So be careful. Sure.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important fact of this, because probably some people, just when you begin to talk about some of these issues, will be like, well, I don't feel that way, so it can't be true of anyone else, and that's just not true. Yeah. And so I think you don't have to share the experience or necessarily agree to relate and understand somebody else could have experienced that. Right. Right. And so it's not saying that you feel that way. Yeah. But that doesn't change what that person has experienced. Yeah. And so you can seek to understand. Yeah. And your perception could just be that 13% you're seeing. Right. You're just seeing the what. Yeah. And you have no idea about the why. It's much deeper below the surface.
Yes, sir.
And so if we're going to have relationships with people that have a different experience, we need to seek understanding.
Yes, sir.
and not sameness.
Yeah.
And I think when we do that, that we can really begin to understand people better and know people better, right?
Yeah.
Because we can really see where they're coming from.
Absolutely.
Whenever the goal of the conversation is to really know and understand, not to be right.
Yes, sir. Common ain't common everywhere.
That's right.
So like what's common for me, what's common in my culture, what's common in my workplace, what's common in my profession, in my skill set isn't common to somebody else because they don't have, or they're not operating in this capacity.
That's true, man.
And so there's some things that happens in certain neighborhoods that are common, but in other neighborhoods they're uncommon. Because that was something that God just showed me early on in life, and I was so grateful for it because it helped me to be more compassionate as I began to build relationships with people. It's like,
that's right,
man. Like, because we can project our expectations on people, and our common sense we try to project it on others when it's like, no, they haven't had to think about that like that. So it's not common for them. They have a whole different perspective. Man. Sure. So we have to understand that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just felt the urge to say that. Common ain't common to everybody.
That's good, man.
Yeah. So, well, Bet, this has been a dope conversation as usual. Man, just so good. So we understand that in order to build relationships, we have to aim for understanding.
That's right.
Yeah, we have to aim for understanding. That's cool. Well, hey, if this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for hanging out with us this whole time. We want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want you to follow us on all our platforms, hit that notification bell, and hey, share this content with somebody. It's not just for church leaders. It's for people who are striving to live a gospel-centered, diverse lifestyle, and engage with people that don't look like you, engage with people that don't think like you, engage with people who don't vote like you, engage with people who don't come from the same background as you come from. If that's you, this is the place for you to be. So I want you to share the resources with other people who may be considering or who are aiming to do the same. All right. So we love you guys. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And once again, this is Mega Podcast, and we are out.
Mega Podcast.
Next time on Mega Podcast. I mean, just to kind of, I guess, thinking about everything holistically, right? Like, I think that as people, we are, or some people, not all people, I think some people are more apt to critique rather than to celebrate. And so we're looking for opportunities to make a person look how we think they should look, or make a person act how we think they should act, versus celebrating the diversity that God has created, between, that person and me. Yeah. And celebrating that. Like, there's just a disconnect that society has said that's okay, and it's not okay. Yeah. Like, there needs to be some type of intentionality where we put down our guard and we put down our preferences, and we start to, though they are different, we start to celebrate the differences that God has created amongst people, and not just look to critique and try to make them assimilate to our culture or assimilate to our ideologies and all that stuff. Yeah. Right. So for sure.